Hey, welcome to Beyond Organic Wine. I'm Adam Huss. Thanks so much for listening. Do vines have memory? Think about the fact that we've been cloning some of them for a long time. Like the original vine may have been born 2,000 years ago. But even without cloning, maybe they pass their memories to their offspring. What kinds of memories do they have about their relationships with humans? Do they care about our names and human achievements? Probably not. We could be a Caesar or a peasant farmer, and the vine wouldn't care, I don't think. Do they remember our wars? And what do they do with that memory? Is it a warning that lives inside them? When they begin to feel the earth shudder from exploding bombs, will they now be ready to react in some way, flip some genetic switch that will give them a greater chance of surviving what's coming? How do you escape when you can't run? And do the vines remember our service to them? Do they know that we who tend them are also the war bringers? Do they have a preference for one of these aspects of our humanity over the other? Do they try to influence us to exhibit some of our qualities and not others? Do they try to entice us towards a lifestyle that leads to their survival? For those of us who work in plants, it becomes apparent that we are much more like the bee or the hummingbird than we imagine. None of us can live without these other lives that feed us. The flower shapes itself to fit the beak of the hummingbird. It turns itself yellow to attract the bee. And the hummingbird and bee carry the genetic seeds to the next flower, making new plant life possible. But why does the hummingbird have such a long beak? Which came first, the trumpet flower or the hummingbird's beak? The vine flavors its fruit to tease us, to lure us, to intrigue our senses and resonate in our minds. We wanted this, of course, but why did we want it? Why did we grow from the soil to desire and enjoy these things? Plants are older than us. We grew from our infancy as a species, reacting to them, relying on them, learning about them, learning from them, our lives shaped by their lives, and their lives shaped by our lives, until it begins to be confusing. Who is growing who is serving who? And maybe that's because of the language we use that separates the two, where there may actually be only one. A vine human, a human tree, a Vitus sapiens, a grape person. Here's a quote from Brent Kincairn, Boulder City Advisor. Quote, "Climate change is not happening because of some simple geochemical machine equation of CO2 in, CO2 out. Yes, we must change our energy systems, but it's actually the regeneration of the living world that is the true hope of us being able to solve both climate change and a whole series of other existential challenges that we face. So let's talk about what a life-centered, not a technology-centered solution to climate change might look like." End quote. My guest for this episode is Rob Schultz. Rob is the vineyard manager for Lemelson Vineyards in Oregon and farms 130 acres of organic vineyards in the Willamette Valley. Lemelson Vineyards has been certified organic for over 25 years and has been one of my favorites since I started in wine over 2 decades ago. Rob also happens to be one of the main people responsible for the Organic Winegrowers Network there in Oregon, which led to the historic Organic Winegrowers Conference this spring of 2025 that I was fortunate to get to attend. Rob has a droll, straightforward manner that I think belies a passionately thoughtful approach to his relationship with the vineyard ecosystem. Throughout this conversation, we'll be bantering along, and then he'll drop an insight bomb out of the blue that I'm still thinking about, having re-listened to this several times. Some topics that come up include Spanish language skills should be a requirement for work in wine, in the U.S. at least, vine sentience and the domestication of humans, breeding a better baby doll sheep, why Oregon makes the best pinot noir in the world, and much more. Enjoy.
Great.
Rob, welcome.
Hey, thank you. And
Thank you.
and thanks for coming up to Oregon the other day and hanging out with us. That was really great for us, and I hope you had a good time.
Thank you. That was the best time. You guys know how to do a Organic Winegrowers Conference, it looks like. You hit it out of the park on the first try. Pretty awesome.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
That was fun. And we've been having little mini conferences like once a month for a few years. So it's been an evolution, and this was so if you wanted to tell your audience or listeners about how it was and how it went, I'd love to hear your take on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did a little bit at the like on the intro of last week's episode, not the one
I
that
heard
just
that.
came
That
out
was
today.
awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I mean, just to say, like, this is, I mean, well, I came up a day early before the conference and got to attend this thing that I want you to talk about because you're such a big part of it. This Organic Winegrowers Network, where you guys just get together. It's like all everybody who's just close enough to drive in for the meeting basically come and is growing wine organically in Oregon shows up and sits in a big room and drinks coffee and you take notes and have a little agenda, but basically people can sort of bring up relevant topics that are affecting the farming, affecting whatever's happening in the vineyards, as well as just the wine in general. And you get the brain trust of everybody there and the years of experience to weigh in and take notes, and knowledge is shared rapidly and solutions are come to, I think, like a lot more quickly, it seems like. And you're just keeping each other informed and keeping each other on each other's like in the loop about progresses and attempts to do things and trials. We tried this, it didn't work, maybe try this, we're going to try this next. um you get some university buy-in there. Patty
Yeah,
Skinkis.
that's been the for me really exciting too. Not just
Yeah,
networking with all my colleagues and getting to hear what they have to say, but working with the OSU and Chemeketa and kind of um, yeah, having getting buy-in from them and seeing how they respond and change their studies and what they're looking at.
I mean it's just like when being there in person, like I think the thing that I said when the first thing I spoke was just like the the number one thing that is the solution to the problem that we were talking about, which happened to be voles, was the very thing that we were doing, which was like getting together and building a community of people to talk about it and share the knowledge about it. Because I think the failure that I saw happen, that I was part of in the vineyard, was the lack of community. The isolation of the both culturally and physically, geographically, the
Yeah.
isolation and the lack of community, the lack of having anybody there who could say like, hey, this is something you got to watch out for, this is like a cyclical thing, like just the knowledge base that you need that transcends just like anybody, that sort of short-term memory that we have, new people moving into a space or whatever,
Hmm.
like it's just having a network that's deep and has decades of wisdom and experience behind it is invaluable. I mean, just
It
like
really is.
incredible.
Yeah, it's great. That's a really good summary, and yeah, that's been a good part of my life up here the last 4 or 5 years. And but
Why'd you start it?
um, it was one of those post-COVID things where everybody was lonely, but also I was sitting at a regular. We have a pretty vibrant community of dedicated viticulturists up here in Oregon to begin with, and there are forums where we can meet, but none that were specifically dedicated to just organic growing. And I was sitting in one next to an organic grower colleague of mine, a real OG, this guy named Di Crisp, who you probably got a chance to meet. He's been
Yeah,
growing
I know the
organically for like
name.
40 or 50 years or something. And I just
where
was like,
where
we,
at is he
uh,
is he multiple vineyards, or is he
yeah, he's been
look?
doing Temperance Hill for the last, I don't know, 30 years. And then he owns
Yeah,
Lumos Vineyards and Winery.
right. Yes, I did meet him,
Re-
and Temperance is like a storied sort of legendary vineyard there for sure.
yeah, it's this iconic vineyard at the top of the Eola Hills that sells to maybe 25 or 30 different growers. And they all
Yeah,
kind of label it because, Dye is just a good grower. But
yeah.
they were talking about something that didn't pertain to organic growing, and I just kind of leaned over and I said, "Hey, there should be a like organic group for us." And he said, "Yeah, you should start it, and I'll text these people, and you text these people," and it kind of grew organically. Uh,
No
sorry,
pun intended.
yeah,
Or pun
word of
pun
mouth.
intended.
Yeah, it just was like a word of mouth thing, and it's to the point where there's like 100 people on the email list now, and it really helped, I think, not just the community of professional grape growers that chipped in. We're all trying to be organic, and but also OSU and Patty Skinkis, who's you got a chance to meet too, who's the head of viticulture at Oregon State University, and super smart, and a former farm kid who understands farming and wants to help farmers. And part of her job, besides research and teaching, is extension. And so she quickly became the co-chair of the group and helps kind of make it, not just farmers, but also the researchers who want to hear from farmers and work with farmers. So they're out there. Extension, local extension, their job is to help farmers. And in the organic and regenerative side of things, you often hear denigration of the state, the state land grant university system. And my experience in Oregon is that's they're more than willing to work with organic growers wholeheartedly, not work against them. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great community.
for sure.
And I think something, again, that I'll just say again, that every community, every region, every AVA, if it's big enough, or, regional AVA doesn't know how much they need it. Like, it is so beneficial. I could just, it was pretty cool. And then that led to the next day, which was really special. That grew out of that meeting. How long have you guys been doing that before you decided to put on the first ever?
For about 3 years, we were getting together. And then last year, I had had a pen pal in New Zealand named Bart Arnst, who's like the head of something called the Organic Winegrowers of New Zealand group. And they're like an aspirational group for us here, where they've been meeting regularly and having a conference every couple of years for a long time too. And they really do a lot of community outreach, and they get the local city to they get all the sommeliers to only carry organically grown wines that week to really kind of get the message out there.
Oh,
and
sweet.
he had come out here to Oregon for our Oregon Wine Symposium, which is kind of I guess you'd call it a conference they do in Portland once a year. And he spoke, and it was really cool. And we made sure that we had like a organic growers group at the same time, so we could pick his brain. And he was really encouraging us to continue and to expand. And I'm not like a advocate or one of those impassioned speakers to help change people's hearts and minds. I'm kind of a happily behind the scenes and doing my thing from the shadows. But this was it was a good opportunity to kind of branch out and create some sort of positive pull for the organic curious, and we heard from a lot of growers who would like to have been there to pour for the people like you who came, and other journalists, and all the wine buyers and the local Portland people who found out and showed up. And but if they're not organic, or they haven't like participated in the greater community of the Organic Winegrowers Network, it's like, well, you gotta show up, and you gotta like participate. And then maybe we'll do this next year and make it bigger and better. And then maybe that'll get the ball rolling on maybe more people thinking about, a more ecological approach to farming, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll
No,
see.
it definitely, I thought during the sort of press get together where we had the panel that Elaine Chuck and Brown moderated,
Yeah, she's
awesome. Yeah, I thought some really great questions came up, from the press. It was just a really, that refocusing. You just don't realize how little attention is paid to the farming of wine until you do it, until you pay attention to it. I've been at this for like 6 years now, and it's like, it's like I'm hyper aware of it, but you don't realize every time I read something, I read, from the press generally, it's the
Mhm.
rare, I know, like the handful of journalists who actually get it right and actually give a crap and, pay attention to it. But the vast majority, it's like about winemaking. It's about, things that are
Yeah.
really superficial and
Terroir, and and that's
yeah,
where
yeah,
like
terroir without an understanding of soil, like,
yeah,
which
all
is
this,
always
yeah. And
fun.
so I think that a lot of the times when people write about wine or talk about wine, they, especially winemakers, they do talk about farming and stuff, but it's rare that, and you're good at this, but given growers and farmers like a voice to kind of speak about it for themselves, because you met the community up here. There's a lot of really smart, good-looking folk up here that like are
Yeah.
impassioned, and they're they got degrees and decades of experience, and they're interesting, at least for me, to like sit and listen to and hear what they have to say. So, um,
I
yeah,
noticed a lot of like really artistic people too, like spouses of wine growers who were like really amazing artists.
oh yeah,
For some reason, like, yeah, like there's this amazing creative side to the community there too. Not only good looking and smart, but you're also creative.
oh yeah, they are, they are. I just kind of I'll give them all the credit. I just take the notes, but
Well,
yeah,
what do you
no,
do? Like, how did you? Where do you work? Where do you farm? Can you introduce
okay.
yourself a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been farming. I really I really like my job. I work for a family-owned winery called Lemelson Vineyards, and I farm about 130 acres now on 5 different sites and 3 of the AVAs here, all organically grown. It's been certified since planting in the early 2000s. I started planting in
Hmm.
the 90s. I just work. It's great. It's super fun. I've been up in Oregon here for about 16 years. I've been farming in grapes for over 20, and I worked my first grape harvest in the south of France in 2002. But I grew
Lovely.
up in Iowa, and I'd worked
Yeah.
like a lot of Iowans. It's a rite of passage as a teenager if you're like from a country family to detassel corn for
Yes. You were a
um,
detasseler.
yeah. So, and if
Did
they,
you have to do any? Did you have to do anything with hogs where you had to like remove
no,
teeth
well,
or tails or anything like
no,
that?
I did not. I was not involved in hog farming, and
That's the other big one in Iowa.
yeah, that's like those are like facilities, kind of like far away from population centers, and
Yeah.
they keep those away. But
Were they
no,
like
I
that
was just
growing
in.
up though? When
What's
when you
that?
were growing up? Was it like that when you were growing up? Weren't there
Well,
still
it
some
was, I
family
grew up in
hog
the '80s.
farms?
I grew up in the '80s, and it was like a major farm crisis. So it was the process of consolidation when
Right.
most of the farmers like went out of business.
Right.
And I just, while I took the bus from Randall's Grocery to at the age of 13 to go to Tassel for the summer,
Okay.
I was a townie, and
Yeah.
after college, where I studied nothing to do with agriculture, and I moved out to the East Coast, trying various careers, and I always kind of found myself reminiscing about like summers working on farms, and how like I just wasn't suited to office life, or I wasn't suited to like working even indoors, or it's just so inhumane, the office environment where you're like, just crammed in with all these fucking people, and you got to like go to meetings and pay attention and pretend like you care about bullshit when it's just like
It's so true.
it's horrible. And so I tried
Yeah.
like a bunch
Right
of,
there with you.
yeah, it's the worst. And so I think
Yep.
it was more like I was kind of driven away from uh, society in general, and found the work of being a vineyard manager is like as like tangentially associated with society as possible while still like making a salary, and I can kind of avoid uh, as much of modern life as possible, which I found toxic and overwhelming. And I'm much better suited to life lived outdoors. And so, in addition to farming at Lemelson, I also have a small farm on the side where my wife and I are raising small children and small sheep. And what else do I do? I run that group.
Have you bred the children to be extra
Yeah,
small?
well, I mean, they're cute, right? So why we choose our those with whom we choose to breed are multi-layered. It's not as easy as with sheep, you know. Um,
So
but
you're actually trying to get a really small sheep breed, right?
yeah, so when I started in vineyards, after France and Spain, I moved to California and ended up working for Phil Katuri, who's kind of an organic guru in Sonoma. And it
Yeah.
was around 2004 when it was just a few years after the codification of what it meant on a national level to be organic, and uh, biodynamics was being like wholeheartedly embraced in the organic community because it for a lot of reasons, right? And one of the cool things that came out of that was like the impetus to start grazing animals, kind of closing the nutrient loop through grazing
Yeah.
animals in a vineyard. And at that time, it was really hot to have this specific breed of sheep called the baby doll. And
Yeah, the baby dolls. Yeah.
yeah, so we started with that, and I moved up here, met my wife, and we started a little farm, and we started with baby dolls, and they're just like not the best sheep. They're kind of dumb, and they're fat, and their wool isn't very good, and they're not the best moms compared to other breeds.
Mm.
And they get like just on pasture after a few years, they'll get like so fat that they can roll on their back and just die. There's just kind of some fundamental flaws with the breed like that, and I don't mean to denigrate um, that breed, but I'm denigrating it. So, but it's cute. It's really cute, and it's really small, and it's really short, and it's great. It's also, but so we just started breeding other cool breeds, and now we've got 8 or 9 breeds kind of mixed together, and they're getting smaller and cuter. My wife Anne, she works as a cheese maker part time at a really great creamery called Briar Rose, and she'd been a home cheese maker for a few years off of a flock of dairy sheep that we'd started. And it's not much like growing grapes. Making cheese is something you have to learn at work and from other people. You can't just read a book about it. So
Wow.
yeah, going back to
How
grape growing.
how is milking sheep?
It's that they're not. Again, I'm a townie. We're townies. We didn't grow up like milking animals, and we found them to be somewhat reluctant. Uh, we didn't find it to be the joyous experience you might have imagined. And so
Hmm.
we're gonna get back to that someday. As soon as like it was honestly like we started doing that right before like the world shut down from COVID and all the schools
Oh,
closed anyways. So it was like it was the perfect COVID project. I think a lot of people bought some dairy animals on Craigslist at that time, and now we're stuck with them. Could be wrong. That's what it's like in rural Oregon, anyways. But
yeah. That's what you do for entertainment there. Yeah, I get it. Yep.
yeah. But so going back to grapes and wine, I sent you some of the Lemelson wine. Did you get a
I'm
chance to
drinking
try?
it right now.
Oh, sick! What do you? Which one are you drinking?
Well, I've had all of them.
Wow.
Just
Oh,
so you know.
nice.
Yeah, I know. I decided to be really professional
That
in
is
preparation, and like I had 2 dinners, and then I actually just organized a little afternoon wine tasting yesterday to involve
awesome.
other people in my debauchery. And
It's professional. It's not
I mean,
debauchery.
sorry, professional tasting. Yeah, no, it. I mean, I think the Chardonnay was the first one I had on Saturday, and then it's been a succession of like the Riesling, and then the Rosé, and then the two Pinots, and
Yeah,
amazing. Wait, am I
right.
missing one?
I'm really lucky in that I work with a good winemaker who tries to just preserve the vintage and not kind of impose his or her will onto a wine to make it kind of fit into a certain thing. And he has a nice light winemaking touch. And I think I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed it, because I think we're making like some of the best wines out there. And
Really good. And I think I mentioned this to you. I've been drinking Lemelson for over a decade, probably at this point. And the the funny thing was yesterday, we opened the Thea's selection
mhm,
and Meyer Vineyard. Did I get
nice.
that right?
Yep.
And I was like, oh, Meyer is Dundee, tastes red fruited. This is really classic Dundee. It makes a lot of sense. It's probably Jory soil.
It
Like it
is. It
just
is. Good
tastes like
call.
Dundee. And then
Hmm.
the selection, I was like, man, this is like darker. It's
Hmm.
more like there's like spice to it. I was like, I bet this is dominantly from Yamhill Carlton with some like sandy, more loamy, sandy stuff where it's just more concentrated. And I actually
Hmm.
called the tasting room yesterday,
Oh,
and
nice.
I think Kate
Oh,
answered,
yeah, yeah.
and she was like, "Yep, that's that. That's you're right. You're right on." I was like, "Okay,
You hit it
thanks."
on the button. Nice. Yeah, Kate knows her stuff. Um, yeah, and
So yeah,
Eric.
very reflective of the that that whole thing. Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's great, man. It's really fun to be able to work. I kind of, I got into wine primarily because I wanted to be a farmer, but also because I had some of those oh shit moments when you drink a wine and
yeah.
it's like wow, this is something special, and
Did you have that in France? Where did you have that first?
well, so growing up in Iowa, and I was like a pretty scrawny, pimply guy in glasses. So I always wanted to go to
Were you?
Europe. So I saved up my money, like working at detasseling and fast food bagels, and like backpacked around Europe for maybe 3 months after I graduated high school. It
Okay.
was like the Ural Pass, and it was
Oh
before the
yeah, the
Euro.
Eurail pass. Yeah.
So like I had like a good couple months of that um, at like the age of 18 and 19, and I went back to Spain to study the next year for like 6 or 7 months in the Basque Country, and I wasn't really paying attention to like wines other than like they tasted good, and they were really fun, and it was
Yeah.
fun to meet. It was different than like puking off a Michelob in a cornfield, which is kind of
Yeah.
the drinking culture I came up on. So
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was no joke. I mean, the Midwest in general is no joke. I can't tell you the number of Midwestern girls I knew who had pictures of their moms doing keg stands,
yeah.
you know. And I was
Well,
like, wow, that's an indication. That's good.
yeah, man, you're Pennsylvania, right? That counts as the Midwest.
Pennsylvania.
At least it's not coastal, and I think
Well, I mean, I was from like, Amish Mennonite country.
yeah,
So very,
yeah,
very different culture.
you drank in a cornfield, guaranteed.
I never drank is the funny thing. I was like a
Oh, okay.
religious kid.
Oh, nice. Okay, well,
That's
saved
why
you
I came to
some.
Iowa to study religion.
Oh, right, that's right. Well, and
Well, I
did you
mean,
find
I came to
religion, or
study
did you?
English.
Yeah.
No, I lost it. I lost it. While studying it, I lost it.
Yeah,
But
no, I think it's funny. So I guess anybody who's listened this far should know we went to college together, and we drank in the
right,
same exact bars for like a solid 3 years, and I don't know if
we pro-
ever
we
met.
yeah, we probably crossed paths. Probably I don't were you at a house party where the floor collapsed while people were singing Amazing Grace around a keg? Because if you remember that moment, we were at the same party together.
I don't remember that one, but
Okay.
yeah. But
It's
yeah,
a
the
very
90s,
specific memory.
80s, and the 90s were like, it was like pre-internet, right? So it doesn't count.
You're right,
It's
exactly.
nothing
Yeah.
happened.
You
Yeah,
you
and
could not know people. You could not. You could actually be
Yeah.
lost to
Yeah,
people.
there's like there I had
You
dear
could get
friends in
lost.
college. I can't remember their last name, and so like Facebook failed, and I don't know where they are out there. They probably died in that collapse you were at, who knows?
No, we all got out safely.
Okay, good.
um, but Iowa City, Iowa, is where I fell in love with Oregon Pinot.
Oh,
Actually, like it
really?
was. I mean, it was kind of the seed that started the whole thing. Started the
Do you
whole
remember
vine
which one it
growing in my
was?
heart. I don't think it exists anymore. I think it was called like Wild Duck or Wild Horse or I
Huh.
mean I don't know if it had Wild Horse. Anyway, it was like
Yeah,
a, anyway, it's something that I think they went out of business eventually, but
they
it
can happen.
was it was a it was a winery. I could be wrong. I mean, what's the one? There is a duck winery there.
Yeah, there's some duck ones. There's some wild animal ones too. They
Yeah,
all
I mean,
blend together.
imagine something that would have been widely distributed and available for $20 in
Sure.
Iowa. It was that
Yeah.
one.
Nice.
Probably we could track that down, but it was like, I'd been drinking. Like I think I mentioned this to you. We'd go to the Dirty Johns, which we called Dirty
Hmm.
Johns because they didn't card you, and so you could get a bottle of something if you just bought like a bottle of wine. If you tried to buy like a keg, of course they'd card you. But if you just went and bought a bottle of wine, they wouldn't
Bottle of
card
wine,
you.
maybe a couple vegetables or whatever to make
Yeah,
it seem
exactly.
legit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a little loaf of bread. Yeah, and like
Yeah.
they don't care. And so we were drinking like whatever $3 bottles of Italian red that, of course, were just like dry and
Yeah.
tart and nothing memorable, nothing exciting, but just like trying to wrap your head around why do people drink this stuff? And then somebody splurged one time and bought this bottle from the co-op that had a different shape, looked
Nice.
a little
Yeah.
different, didn't have an Italian name, and we tried it, and it was like, whoa, like it was memorable. It moved me, it stirred me. It was like this. I'm starting to get why people like this stuff, and I tracked it down, like so much so. And
Hmm.
this is just like indicative of my
Future
whole
career.
thing. Yeah, it was like I tracked it down. I went to the co-op and like talked to the wine guy. Like was like,
Yeah.
what was this? I drank this. I had to know. And they were sold out. But but he was like, oh yeah, that was from Oregon. That was a Pinot Noir from Oregon. And from that moment on, that was just like in my head. And that was it. Like years later,
Yeah.
Oregon became one of my first loves.
It's like if you like Pinot Noir, it's kind of the best place. And I know there's other places like Burgundy or wherever that are supposed to be important, but um
I wrote
I
a
don't know.
whole
I think
blog piece about how like California was too ripe and Burgundy was underripe, and Oregon was like the perfect marriage of the two, kind of thing. Like,
it's true. And like, I mean, I don't mean to denigrate our, spiritual ancestors of Burgundy, but like they get downy mildew. That shit's like, so they got to spray copper all the time. And so their soils are all polluted. So I don't know.
yeah,
I'm thinking Oregon's maybe,
yeah,
maybe better.
yeah,
Who am I to say? I'm just a dumb farmer, I just
from
think,
Oregon.
yeah, but,
No bias at all.
no, no, I'm just looking at it, totally unbiased. Sure, it's not that I happen to own land in the Willamette Valley and have spent my whole career here.
Well, bringing this back to the farming that's going on there, I mean, like, why did you get into organic farming? Like, I mean, you started your career, you fell in love with wine, you wanted to work outside, but none of that necessarily necessitates that you're going to be,
Organic. I
farming.
think it was
Yeah.
honestly growing up in Iowa and being aware and seeing like, I don't know. I think at a certain point, um, I remember reading a book in college that described like the Iowa River being like crystal clear and you could see to the bottom of it, and the natives would
Oh,
like dive for mussels, and that thing is just nothing but like brown goo with like
yeah. Yep.
disgusting carp that eat sewage because of just all the farm runoff. And
Yeah. Yeah.
Iowa's like number one for nitrates in the water, and it's
Yeah.
also like it's only number two in rates of cancer, uh, second
Wow.
only to Kentucky. And so,
Kentucky. I thought the Delta, like the Louisiana.
Well,
Like I
I
thought
think
they called
Kentucky
that
still got,
Cancer Alley.
yeah, you still got coal mining. So,
Oh, and yeah, and you've got rivers and Coleman. You've got it's
and
you've got
tobacco
the river.
farming too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which tobacco farming is
So I
pretty
think that
intense.
like I was always like pretty like environmentally aware, and I don't know if I'm like a hippie. I got a ponytail now, so that kind of counts, but I was just always like kind of into the aware of the environment around me. I think because I was always kind of discontent inside and around people, that I spent a lot of time outside, and
Yeah,
so it was for me like eh, I wouldn't, when I've had jobs where I had to not be organic, it's more of a job and less of a vocation, like less of a calling. Whereas with organic growing, because of the better environmental impact, because of being like more a part of nature instead of working against it. And I also like, I'm kind of creeped out by, I don't know if I mentioned society and modernity and all these like products and chemicals that are used in farming. Yeah, it's, there's a lot
yeah,
of people my age who grew up where I grew up that have already like survived cancer or not, and
right. Yep.
it's not, I think Iowa just passed some law where you're not allowed to sue for pesticide damage from having applied pesticides. It's like one of those new ag gag laws that's coming down the pipeline in
Wow.
today's
Yeah.
climate, where even though the science is there and the lawsuits are, being successful, they don't want to hold the corporations who produce these products that are in wide use to be held accountable. So, I'm happy
Yeah.
to.
I mean, and I mean, I think they're being sued because they knew, like, just
Yeah,
like the fossil fuels company knew that it would cause global warming. Monsanto knew that they would cause cancer. Like, there's no question. Like, the documents are there. They've like, it's yeah, like it's a lot of that stuff is I think that's why this. But so I don't even know how you like. Yeah. Well,
yeah, no,
that's
it's well,
indicative
and
of stuff. It's pretty sad.
yeah, no, I think there's like kind of, you can always divide people, but in my line of work, there's like two types of vineyard managers, and there's, you know, the type that golf and the type that don't. And the type that golf want it to look like a golf course, and they want to get done early, and they want to go golf. And they cut corn, and those vineyards do look good when you're driving past, because you don't see like they don't, you know, it's uniformity. Um,
Yep.
and uh, and there's
Ca- You know,
there's still like the vibe out there that organics doesn't work, right? That you can't prevent powdery mildew being an organic farmer, and I'm here. That's not true at all. And
yeah.
we're finding that organic growers have way less problems with disease, especially powdery mildew, the last few years, because a lot of these synthetic products have lost efficacy because through misuse, they're no longer. There's powdery mildew that are resistant to the effects of these like modern fungicides. So
Yeah,
there's
and
only
not
like
only that.
four real products that there isn't resistance anymore, 4 or 5 in the synthetic world. And a lot of these conventional growers are using organic methods and chemistries just to prevent resistance from spreading. So, um,
Yeah, and it's not only that by relying heavily on chemistry, they're building resistance, but they're also degrading the soil and health of the soil, and the vine is therefore weakened and less able
yeah,
to fend for itself.
for sure. And one of the things I've been interested in the last few years is uh, how to trigger the grapevine's own immune defense system, the systemic acquired resistance, and there are certain pathways that trigger the grapevine to understand that it's under microbiological attack, and it will produce more antifungal compounds. Now, they're not enough to like fully protect itself, but they do. The antifungal compounds that are produced are typically um, like things that make the wine taste better, like quercetin and other
Right.
tannins. So it's
Right.
the tannins are like a plant's immune response system, and so a lot of the products that we're using in organics, microbiologicals and plant extracts, are, while they're doing one thing like killing off or preventing powdery mildew, they're also triggering the grapevines to produce more tannins. And so I don't know, something's going on there, right? And none of these systemic products seem to be doing that to the extent that the organic products do. So, yeah.
No.
Yeah, we've been growing grapes for like what 11,000 years, and it's only been the last 50 that we haven't been able to do it without synthetic products. So,
Yeah, that's what I like too. Right.
yeah.
Yeah. People call it conventional. I'm like, I don't know. Like it's kind of a historic aberration. in,
Yeah.
like the entire wine industry is this crazy anomaly in the vast scope of history.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It's
I
it's crazy that like we've entirely forgotten that it can be done. A lot of our success in organic viticulture in the last few years and providing for higher quality fruit has been some of the newer organic fungicide products that have come to market that are like plant extracts and
yeah,
microbiological products that
yeah, the
are
biologicals. Yeah.
and what's interesting about microbiologicals is that like they'll tell you that it works because there's these living creatures that are preventing uh but it's not really accurate. It's more likely the case that it's the byproducts of the fermentation process, that there's certain strains of bacillus that produce antifungal compounds while they're like reproducing and in nature. So these have been like isolated, and so while you're growing these populations of microbiologicals, what these producers are really doing is producing these byproducts that are certain
Huh.
compounds. And
So it's not really Japanese knotweed that's
well,
efficacious. It's
Japanese
the
knotweed works.
fermentaceous process.
No, that works. It's more
Oh,
likely
okay.
not the bacillus, whatever,
Got it.
amylofascians, so
Gotcha.
like products like Serenade and Sonata and Botector. There's a ton of products on the market now that like promise that what you're doing is you're applying these living creatures to your plant, and they're gonna kind of outcompete powdery mildew. And whether or not they're actually alive after having been in a plastic jug in a hot
Right.
summer chemical shed for a month or two is up for debate. But it's they some of them
Yeah, not
work
to
and
mention
some of
the
them don't.
transport. Yeah, the whole
Yeah,
industrial system.
some of the more expensive ones are for botrytis, and they like have to be kept refrigerated until you apply. And really, you should apply them at night, because they don't do well under UV light. And it's like we're
Right.
applying these things onto like UV light receptors. So, I don't know. I don't rely much on microbiological products. But I also I've been lucky in that I've pretty much avoided any really serious powdery mildew outbreaks for the last few years. And I think a lot of that has to do with having been able to get together with, sorry to return to the former theme of like having a peer-to-peer network, but being able to talk to other growers to find out what they're using and works or not. Because everybody's running experiments, especially in desperate years when maybe your neighbor got really bad powdery mildew and it's kind of like starting to like blow over the fence line, and you got to do something you're not used to. So
Right.
there's agronomists. It's like, how do people find out about what works and what doesn't? Agronomists are just, they're often helpful, but they're selling products, and there's a reason why they're all wearing vests with the name of a chemical that they're selling to you. It's because they've been taken out to lunch by the chem rep, and and now they're taking you out to lunch to convince you that you should buy this product and it's totally going to work. And that's, one way of finding information, but there's other routes and other networks you should have, not just your peers, but also checking in with like the universities who are doing pesticide efficacy trials. Stuff like that. But I'm a big, those are all important networks to have. But I think, like, for me personally, the most important network a grape grower needs to have personally requires the ability to speak Spanish. And I think I learned most of what I know about vineyards by having worked with crews, and because I had learned Spanish and was eager to learn more when I started in the field. I think that there's, like, in any commercial vineyard, there is a crew of people working there who have been there maybe for years, who speak Spanish, and they are going to understand the ins and outs of your vineyard and your vines better than anybody with a 4 or 6 or 8 year degree in viticulture can. Not only because they have been staring at grapevines for however many years, but also because they're just more eyes and ears. And so, and I think that I know a lot of people in my job and line of work who do the work without the ability to speak Spanish, and I don't know how they do it, because I get really good advice and I get really good news, and I just learn a ton by talking to the people who work in the vineyard, and I really think that in America, the language of vineyard work is Spanish. And so the vast majority of people who work in vineyards, who've planted vineyards, who've worked in vineyards for decades, are primarily Spanish speakers. And if you really want to, I don't know, if you really want to find out as an organic grower if you've got powdery mildew or not, you should ask your crew and tell them that if they find it, you'll bring cold beers for the whole crew, and they get to choose what type, or sodas if you're, don't want to be cool. And not only will they find an outbreak before you can, they'll, they're because, it's like 12, a van is 12 to 15 people who all know how to look at grapevines probably better than me. And so if I can speak with them and treat them with the dignity that all humans deserve, and get and ask them their opinions about things like everybody at work yearns to have done with them, then maybe I will be better at my job. So, and you can get a degree in viticulture, you can get a degree in vineyard management, but none of them seem to require the bilingualism. And I'm an old man now. I'm turning 50, so I'm like shaking my fist at the sky, and you can get by without it, but I'm better at my job, and I'm I've learned so much from the community of vineyard workers who speak Spanish that I can't I can't estimate how much I know about vines and grapevines and how to take care of them because I spoke Spanish, So those are also my peers. So I try to pay attention, and so Spanish, it's super, that's one, if I'm only ever on one podcast and I only ever talk about vineyards once in public, to anyone who ever wants a really awesome and fun job where you get to live outside and as part of nature and be an organic grape grower, you should have the fundamentals of Spanish. And if you don't speak Spanish, you should just like go live somewhere or with somebody who can you can learn it from, because there's a big world and a giant chunk of it only speaks Spanish, you know?
Yeah, Mexico has a bunch of vineyards. Spain has a bunch of vineyards. Argentina has a bunch of vineyards. Chile has a bunch of vineyards. Go there to do your staging and then come back.
Yeah, and
Do
honestly,
some
like
immersion.
I spoke Spanish because I studied in Spain twice, once and as an undergrad, and then once I went to a winemaking school. And when I moved to California, I quickly realized I didn't speak the same language as the guys in the vineyard. And there's just a unique language, and you can say it's Spanglish or whatever. But I'm now, I started teaching part time at nights at a Chemeketa Community College that has a really cool program in vineyard management that's starting to offer classes in Spanish. And so I just wrapped up a term teaching vine physiology, and now I'm teaching grapevine pest management. But the translation into Spanish, you can't just like throw it into Google and it spits out into a language that anybody in Oregon can understand, because it's just a completely different vocabulary set. And it's a unique culture in its own right, and it's
Right.
there's ways of speaking about grapevines in the Spanish language that aren't necessarily encompassed in English. You know, for instance, we're often talking about vine vigor and vine balance in English, but the term that's most frequently used in Oregon is la fuerza, like the force
Mm.
of a grapevine. And
Mm.
I don't know. You know, it's not a direct translation either, like literally or figuratively. So, you know, it's good to attack a problem from a couple different angles, you know? So,
Have you ever I have you heard the term macho, like for describing a vine?
yeah,
For
macho,
like,
I would believe that would mean that it's like got a lot of fuerza. It's like a pretty vigorous vine. And
yeah, I heard it used for like rootstock. So
uh
like it would like yeah. Anyway,
yeah, I mean, I do pretty good for like a white dude, you know, but so I don't want to like uh, uh yeah, I'm doing my job of like translating like viticulture terms into Oregon Spanish, like how to like
well, this
translate the
might
Spanish into English terms for English speakers. I think
this
you
might be
should
California Spanish. I don't know. Yeah,
yeah, also there are dialects, you know, for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's really good. No, I'm yeah.
I guess that's my soapbox issue is the language of the vineyards is Spanish, and uh
Yeah, it's the dominant language of wine in America for sure. Um,
100%, you know.
yeah,
um
yeah, I
let's
appreciate that. I So let me ask you something. You have been doing this for a while. Do you What do you think about the vine's intentionality with luring you into this profession?
oh yeah, I think that's a good way of asking. Yeah, I think uh I don't know if you believe in like the collective subconscious or whatever, but or sense of inherited memories maybe. But if that's not something that like is in your wheelhouse of conjecture, that it's just such an it's like the it's just such an old profession and something we've done since before civilization. And I really one of those fundamental books before I got into grapevines that like came I came across was The Botany of Desire, which kind of spells out an idea of, instead of like domestication being a one-way street, like we grabbed this grapevine and made it ours, it's more like a co-domestication. And maybe they, in fact, the grapevine maybe domesticated humanity, like what really caused the Neolithic Revolution and hunter-gatherers to settle down, and where they did. There's, if you read like Guns, Germs, and Steel, his thought is that it was like close to locations of acorns or what, like, or I don't know, but and others, think it's grains. But for
Right.
my money, my when I'm thinking about things, that the first center of grapevine domestication was in, what's now considered Israel and Palestine. And that's like and there's, I don't know, you look at religion, and not just Judeo-Christianity, but also the religions that predate that, in Greece and Rome and Mesopotamia. They all had strong influence of viticulture
But
in their spirituality. And I don't know, I was always, when I didn't know what to do with my life, I wanted at least a vocation with some sort of meaning. And grape growing and viticulture offers that, in that it's been just something that we as a species have done since we were like hunter gatherers. And you studied religion. How many times does the Bible speak of grapevines and vineyards? It's like all the goddamn
yeah,
time.
from the beginning.
And,
Yeah, from Genesis all the way through. But
yeah,
but having said that, to me now that seems like an accident. Like it's not an accident, but it's an accident of culture. Like it's an accident that those cultures liked the grapevine. I mean, maybe, I only say that because I've gotten more familiar with the, cultural beliefs of the cultures of North America, for example, who,
mhm.
until you get to like the Southwest and Central Mexico, really rejected fermented beverages. Like no connection. And they had tons of grape species to work with. You know what I
Sure.
mean? And
Yeah.
that's like part of the really interesting thing about history, when, like why we even have vinifera as this dominant global species, and why we have to talk about hybrids as this thing, instead of like the whole world of wine is just hybrids, which would be natural, especially if wine cultures had evolved in North America, for example. But those cultures that had these multiple species to work with were just like, nah, not my vibe. Like, not
Yeah.
into it. They just sort of were like, Nope, thank you." Like, we know
Well,
it's there. We know.
I've read about a lot about American varieties of grapes, and from what I understand, whereas the European grapevines were primarily their seeds were dispersed via birds eating them and spreading them around. In North America, the primary grape seed dispersal vector were bears, and so they're and
We had a
so
lot of bears.
the flavors that developed naturally in these American grapes might not have really appealed to
Aren't we
humanity.
closer to bears than birds? I mean,
I don't know, man.
I
That's
feel like we're closer to bears than birds. We should have been. I think it's something else. I mean, to me, some of
yeah,
those theories are just meant to bolster this, like, vinifera is just inherently superior sort of
sure.
myth, which I think is
Well,
bullshit. And I think
yeah,
it's just accidents. I think it was just accidents of culture and evolution. Like,
or did
you
the
know,
grapevine, or did Vitis vinifera truly domesticate us and encode into our religions the impetus to continue the propagation of a species via vegetative means? Like,
well,
how
that is really
deeply,
interesting. That
yeah,
is
like
really interesting.
I
Yeah. I
feel
mean,
often, because like I'm like wholly unsuited for any other career at this point, that I've like in a lot of ways like a grapevine servant and have been domesticated by them. And I think sometimes when I start to think conspiratorially, I think that maybe, I don't know, maybe this plant like Pinot Noir, we know that we've been growing it for 2,000 years, right? So, is the Pinot Noir that I grow aware of the fact that it's 2,000 years old? That we've been like, it's like, does it remember
Clonally
the
produced. Yeah.
Gauls and Caesar? And because but yeah, no, I read one of the great things about being a grape grower and an organic grape grower too is that we're like part of a long line of like vocational ancestors, right? And a lot of them left books behind that we can read and take notes, and a lot of them had really great advice. So, um, yeah, I think if you're
Yeah, you've been studying a lot of that. So tell me, yeah, I mean, this is a question I wanted to ask you. You sent me this. I mean, I just putting this out there for anybody listening that you sent me. You're sort of compiling the knowledge that you're learning from these ancient texts about viticulture and wine. And
Yeah, well, like there's a ton of them, right? If you go through
right,
history and dating back to like 800 BC, like when books started being recorded, one of the first ones was Hesiod's Works and Days, and man, that's primarily about viticulture and grape growing. And every few hundred years, there's some books that have been preserved that give really good advice about all sorts of topics that like when I've gone through, and they didn't have like editors and word processing back then. So it's like not easy to like read, and they're not easy to like, they're out of order, they're not like,
yeah.
they didn't come up with like, headings and, bullet points, right? You could just imagine some dudes just walking behind some guy writing down what he says as quick as he's speaking. But,
So
yeah,
in
there's like some really good writers from like both ancient Greece and Rome and after Rome that like I've gotten some like cool tips from and like something to think about, and
what are
that's what's great. Yeah, so
that
go ahead.
no, that's what I wanted to ask about was what are some of those tips? Like what are some of the really interesting,
Um,
surprising,
y-
or super
y-
insightful things that you've learned?
um, well, okay. So right now we're at the beginning of April. Um, And some people, there's like a hot new topic in viticulture is called sap flow pruning. And it's
Right,
like there's
right.
these high priced pruning experts that come
Yeah.
from Europe to train your Latino workforce and how to prune in a different way based on how sap flows. And, but I was reading a book written like in the first century. This guy Columella, who is my favorite of the Roman writers, and he references somebody from the fallen Carthaginian Empire. The only kind of pieces of information that survived its destruction were agricultural wisdom, and they're quoted only in this one book. And that one of the pieces of advice is that it's kind of cool to prune your grapevines in the spring while the sap is flowing, because and so it's like everything that's old is new again, right? So
Yeah.
if I was like more like entrepreneurial, I'd probably try and package it into some sort of like easily digestible and marketable uh, set of vocabulary terms that I could sell.
Like regenerative.
I mean, or like all the buzzwords, that al- that are vague but sound awesome. And agroecological is going to be the hot new one, and I want to,
You
every
should
once in a
own
while,
that. Yeah.
like I started during
Agroecological.
the big biodynamic boom, right, where everybody rushed
Yeah.
towards that, and then like I really have always like approached farming organically from the standpoint where I wanted to accumulate biomass in the soil, and I wanted to do all the things that regenerative farming does. Um, but I'm like anti-dogma, and I'm kind of, we're stuck with these grapevines that have been planted onto rootstocks, debilitating rootstocks that were chosen to uh, speed up harvest, but might be the weakest and least appropriate for going no-till, right? So
Yeah.
if you're going to go no-till, um, you should plant a new vineyard accordingly, and then like trying to apply the desires of a dogmatic approach uh, can lead to disastrous results. Like, I don't have a trust fund. I got a mortgage to pay, and if I kill off a vineyard because I wanted to not till, I'm going to lose my job, which many of my colleagues have. I've seen it happen, and so I I'm cautious about just uh, embracing the no-till lifestyle because I've seen the results, and I till already as minimally as possible. So
Yeah.
but I didn't want to jump on the regenerative bandwagon too early because I didn't know how it was going to shake out, and I also felt like I was like late to the game. Like everybody jumped on it early, and I didn't want to like compete with like saying I was a regenerative farmer, because then they like, I don't know. It's like that's the people who are like leading that bandwagon. I'm happy for them, and I hope it works out. And it's cool. I like it, and it's a sexy, awesome, fun word, and I want
But
to have.
what you're
Yeah,
saying is the dogma around no tillage can be destructive.
yeah. I think, and I've seen it where, yeah, and you've seen it. Yeah, I listened to
Yeah,
your
yeah.
podcasts, and
Yeah.
there are results, and there's like reasons why, I mean, and I went deeply into the archival information, and there are very few writers who discuss not digging and out the weeds in your vineyard, or or controlling the other vegetative material in your vineyard to some extent, and
Yeah.
mostly it involves what we'd call cultivation, which was usually done, by hand with people with spades. We have better equipment now, and
Yeah.
I I till like
And
2 or 3 inches
fossil
deep, and then I always reseed with a very diverse cover crop, and I always try to preserve some of the soil structure, and um, I
Yeah.
reluctantly till, but I'm focused wholeheartedly on grape quality and vine health, and secondarily on uh, dogma, or
Yeah.
yeah. It's and as luck would have it, Eric Lemelson, who owns Lemelson Vineyards, he's a really strong environmentalist. And in early on at Meyer Vineyard, which you tried the other
Yeah.
day,
I
he tried to
literally
go
just finished
no-till.
the bottle.
Yeah, yeah, it's delicious, right?
Yeah,
Our
no,
best
that's what I
blocks
was
from
drinking
there.
while we've been talking, and it's gone now. So
Oh, nice,
I wish I
nice.
had more. Yeah, I'm like
Yeah,
I'm licking the glass.
at lemelsonvineyards.com. There's always more, but
Exactly. Right. Right.
product placement.
Perfect. Good. Good. Good.
Yeah, yeah, that's it's yeah, they're the best block in that vineyard is missing half the vines because they tried to go no-till early on, and the voles went crazy, and
Yeah.
permanently weakened those vines to where they were like barely producing fruit. And there's no way of getting around that but pulling them out and replanting, which I just did a couple of years ago. So it's a
Are
it's
you
a
are you grazing the vineyards now?
No, I am not. The
Okay.
vines are quite low,
Yeah,
and
as
they're
most are in
planted.
Oregon.
Yeah, we're
Oregon, you guys do like these like 1 foot trunks
uh,
and cane
this,
pruned, right?
this is
Like literally, that's like so
yeah.
much of Oregon.
Well, a lot of
You
it,
know.
yeah. I'm anti-dogma, but I'm also living in a lot of within the dogmatic system of
Yes.
a perennial planting system where you're kind of stuck with what you got that somebody decided 20 or 30 years ago. And at the
Right.
time, certain densities seemed like a good idea.
Right.
I think in retrospect, if I were to plan and I do have 2 acres on my farm where someday I'll plant the most innovative vineyard in the world. But until then, until I get hit by a bus and get a nice payout, I'm going to hold off on those plans and um, keep farming already planted vineyards for uh, uh, good owners who treat the environment well, and
Yeah.
that's what I got here, and it's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
yeah, I like it. It allows me to, yeah, you know, I while I'm, in obscurity and happily so, I still get to feel like I'm a part of something bigger, in that it's something we've been doing for as long as humanity's been around. And also there's a community of people. Like when I go to these grower meetings, man, it's really funny. I feel like I'm a stereotype. Everybody's kind of wearing the same plaids. We all have the same beards and shoes, and
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, yeah, it's a nice. And
Yeah.
I would guarantee down in California there is a community too, but they just maybe haven't
Absolutely.
been networked together effectively. So
No, I mean, there's, it depends on where you are, it's a big area. So some
yeah,
places have it, some places have more of it, some places, there's all these little microcultures or mesocultures maybe. But yeah,
sure.
there's, it's happening. But yeah, they, they definitely need your get together with a farmer and have coffee once a month thing.
Well, yeah, I don't know how I can help them.
Your peer farmers, yeah. Well, I mean, you're setting the example. I think that's it. I think just showing what's happening. Yeah, yeah,
Cool. Well, if we do this conference next year, we'll make it big enough and schedule it at a time when maybe more of you California guys can come on up. And a lot of
yeah,
us, like I did, moved here from California. In fact, the people who first planted the modern vineyards were both like Davis grads who came here in the 60s. So, it's like, whereas, yes, the true Oregon natives grumble a little bit about the Californians who are moving here. And now that I've been here long enough, I see that there's been a new wave that just drove up property values during COVID. It's a
yeah,
bummer, but it's just kind of like it's not like there's a border at the state line.
yeah. You guys need to build a wall.
I mean, I would like to point out that it does rain here for 8 months in a row, and you were
Oh
here
yeah,
for it, and it's like that all the time, and it's definitely not sunny and warm out today. It's horrible, and most Californians couldn't possibly survive.
yeah. You just sent a Californian intern screaming back south,
We
right?
did. She couldn't handle
Yeah,
it. I told her to take vitamin D, but they didn't listen. And
yeah,
no, it's it definitely yeah, Oregon's it was the best decision I ever made to come here on vacation and stick around. So
yeah.
um,
And
yeah,
marry your landlord.
I'm glad you came up here, and I hope
I am too.
yeah, and I know we had some other topics I thought about talking about, but I bet
Well,
I've
yeah.
already.
Any final last thing that you just like is burning, burning your soul that you feel really bad that you didn't say.
Um, no, but I do. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't come up with any super sage things to say as a conclusion. But
No, no,
dang, shoot,
you
I
did.
missed out. You're supposed to. I feel like I don't know. A lot of the people who are successful on these things have had media training and have practiced. I know people who've been on your podcast who they practice their speeches. And I
Well,
don't.
I
Yeah.
I mean, in the same way that I believe in a diversity of wine cultures, because there are a diversity of people all over the planet, and we all
Mhm.
need something different than everybody else. Like we can't all love Pinot Noir or Cabernet. We all need our own thing. I also believe in the same sort of diversity in just about everything, including the tone and style and content of these podcasts. So I think this was special and unique, and that's what I care about. So thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm not.
Rob Schultz, everybody.
Yeah, well, it's really great to meet you and get to know you, and
Likewise.
I'd love to have you back up here sometime and hear what you got to say about other stuff. So thanks for coming, and thanks for having me on, and thanks for
Thank
trying the
you.
wine. And I'm
Oh
glad
my
you liked
God.
it.
I'm buzzed right now. It's fantastic. It's
Awesome.
on some really good Oregon Pinot. It's like it's a full circle experience for me.
It's crazy how good it can be, right? It's
Ah,
like yeah.
yeah.
So cool, man.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm glad you enjoyed your time up here, and I hope you come back.
Thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I want to thank all of you who support this podcast through donations, Patreon subscriptions, sponsorships, or just posting a great review and telling a friend. You make this podcast possible, and I'm honored and humbled and inspired by your support. If you'd like to support this podcast, you'll find links to all the ways you can support it in the show notes.